we're going to look at noting domain and range for when you guys have graphs. So something like what we're going to see on the next page. So with graphs, you can't just list the points because it's an infinite number of points that are on the graph. So just listing them out isn't really possible because there's an infinite number. So we actually use interval notation just like when you have inequalities to also talk about domain and range of graphs when you're given like a visual of a graph. So we still use the brackets and the parentheses just like we do for inequalities. So if you have a closed dot on your graph, or if you have a graph, or if your graph ends and I guess you could say where it's just part of the graph, you are going to use the brackets. So the only time we ever use the parentheses is when there's an open dot, or if it's continuous, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So this part we'll do tomorrow, and this guy leave blank, we'll do that tomorrow. So for today, you need to know that if you've got part of your graph or if there's a closed dot, we're going to use a bracket. And then parentheses is when we're not including the values, just like inequalities. And that's when there would be an open dot or an arrow, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So when you're talking about graphs and not just given a list of points, domain is still your x value. But then when you're looking at the graph, you have to think, okay, think of your x-axis, and that's going to be horizontal, right? That x-axis is your horizontal axis. So we're going to look from left to right along that axis when you're looking at your graph. And then your range is your y value. So on your y-axis, that's kind of your vertical axis. So we look vertically up and down. Or if we're thinking about least to greatest, that's going to be from bottom to top. So domain is left to right, talking about the x values. Range is bottom to top, talking about the y values. And then when you guys, because there's an infinite number of points, if we're trying to determine if a graph that we're given is a function or not, I don't know if you guys remember this. It's called, we use the vertical line test. So like if you guys can draw a vertical line through a graph. So like actually, let's give us two graphs here. So like say we had something that looks like this. And then something that looked like this. So if you guys draw a vertical line and it hits your graph more than once, it's not a function. So like if you draw a vertical line through this one, it hits once, that's good. That would be a function. But if you draw a line through this one, hits twice, that would not be a function. So we'll look at that on the next page, but quick note about determining if a graph is a function given a visual instead of just a list of a couple of points for looking for repetitions, because this would be that x value repeating more than once. That x value right there.